Michelle, to Mystere Creations. It's very great to have you on with us. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good. Not quite awake as it's early for me, but it's okay. Um, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, please?
I'm a writer and an investigator of paranormal topics. My expertise is the occult and fringe or alternative religions. I've got a degree in comparative religious studies. I actually took demonology from the Jesuits. In paranormal circles, I think probably one of my most widely read and sourced books is The Dictionary of Demons. And if people recognize my voice, they probably, possibly, especially if they watch American TV, have caught me on shows like Paranormal State, Portals to Hell, or Monsters and Mysteries in America. Um, I've been on a couple of shows in the UK and in Norway, and just kind of toddling along, being an occult expert, reading lots of books, and occasionally chiming in and also doing psychic work.
Okay, having fun.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. What is your spiritual practice, and does being a psychic affect how you do that?
Mm. I'm pagan clergy, and I run a magical society called House Kepru, which I founded back in 1996. So it's been around for a little while. We are kind of non-denominational pagan in the sense that it's more eclectic, and what binds us together in terms of belief is energy work, psychic experience, and past lives. I how does that it's really hard to extricate, my beliefs from my experiences as a psychic.
Mm,
Although I do my best to not project my beliefs on my interpretation of my experiences. So let me clarify. The fact that I am psychic and that I accept that I'm psychic and the way that I accept that it works is very much founded in my belief system.
okay.
And that psychic ability exists, energy exists. That's sort of like fundamental to that part of things. And I also think as clergy, it's very important for me not to try to present everything through the lens of my belief about it, but to simply like present, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I'm perceiving, and leave the interpretation up to the folks I'm working with or the folks who are participating via witnessing, whether it's on a show or as collaborators.
When did you find out that you were psychic? Was it at a young age?
Yeah, I was born with a heart defect, and my life expectancy was 5. So I had pretty early conversations with my family about life and what came after and what we might believe. My family was second or third generation Irish, and Catholic. And the thing about Irish Catholicism, which you'll find in most different branches of Catholicism, from Italian, Mexican on down, Catholicism has a deep mystical stream woven throughout it.
Mhm.
And it weds very easily with the folklore and the original traditions of the people whose beliefs it supplanted. That's sort of how it works. So there was a lot of belief in second sight and psychic abilities, and the belief that these things were passed down among the family, that people had had experiences with perceiving ghosts, and that was pretty normal. So it was never presented to me as something that wasn't okay, uh, to the point where it didn't occur to me as a small child that I was, having experiences that were extraordinary. They were very normal. Going to school, growing up, is when uh, the academic, scholarly part of me like really kicked in, because I realized that that wasn't everybody's experience or belief about the world.
Mm,
And that's what steered a lot of my interest in comparative religious studies, because I wanted to understand why people believe what they believe, like how we take our experiences and perceptions about the world and the things that happen in it, and sort of distill that into a belief about what those things mean.
I find it very interesting how when you're young, you don't get that your experience isn't everyone else's. I kind of went through the same thing myself because I had uh, well, I was born blind, and at 8 or 16 months, they did an operation that gave me sight. So
Oh, wow.
it my senses developed to a degree that I could hear one octave less than a dog, and before this, and so it just colored the rest of my life after that. So I find your beginning very interesting as well.
Well, and really, like early surgeries, especially before the age of 5, like infant, because what my first major open heart surgery was when I was 6 months old. Uh, like those experiences have a pretty deep impact on like how you relate to your body and how you relate to people, and just it shapes a lot of things. Some of it traumatically, and some of it in ways that I think we learn to grow around what
Yeah,
might otherwise be a limitation.
make a negative a positive.
It can be, yeah, it totally can be.
Yeah. Um, you spoke a little bit about House Capiro.
Hmm.
Um, what is it exactly? You've pretty much explained that, but can you elaborate a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, it's I guess technically it's a mystery school, a mystery tradition. So it's a magical school. It is not exactly like a witchcraft or a witch coven.
Okay.
Uh, People come in with multiple different belief systems, and that's actually encouraged. We've got Christians and Taoists and atheists, and where our mutual belief is unified is about energy, and how people interact with energy and how that is a part of our psychic experiences and psychic development. So we do yearly rituals, but it's less about. In a lot of paganism, it's kind of God centric, like different, whether it's Celtic deities or Norse deities, deities drawn from other different mythic traditions, and House Kepler is more non-theistic in the sense that each individual person's relationship with a god, goddess, or divine is completely up to them. Like that's not the purpose of the system. The system is more about harnessing our abilities, uh, how we relate to our psychic perceptions, how we inherently develop those abilities, and what we decide that means for our course in life. Sort of the buzzword, like the main thing is seek your own truth. So it's all about sort of finding like who you are and what that means to you, and in what direction does that take you in the world. And sort of we're all exploring that together.
Excellent. I love that it's open in a way that everyone can be individual. It that to me is key to any good religious, or sorry, pagan practice, is to have it open, because in my own practices I've connected to entities that weren't of my ancestry. As
Hmm.
far as I know, there's a possibility that they could be part of my ancestry, and I don't know. In your own ancestry, do you find there's a you connected to uh, the the entities of, or deities of that group?
So it's interesting. Again, I was raised Catholic, but a very mystically minded Catholic, and pretty early on I butted heads with that because I wanted to be a priest, and I was born with the wrong plumbing as far as the Catholic Church was concerned, and that was sort of like the first thing that made me go like, well, one, this isn't fair. Like I'm who I am, and why would you keep that over that? And so uh, actually, a little bit about how in House Kaparu we work with what we call the disembodied, and I chose that term as I was developing our works and our teachings to make a distinction between a sort of like what people think of as your garden variety ghost, which is like a human spirit that is usually lingering and might be stuck. Because the disembodied are they're they are intelligences that in many cases present human. Certainly, most of them have lived human lives. Not all of them will resonate as entirely human. And in a lot of ways, for us at least, open up the possibility that not everything running around in a human body is necessarily human. And what we think of as ancestry and origin may be more complicated than blood.
That's what I've been finding. Um, this project basically started because of watching Hellier,
Mm-hmm.
and the investigations we did after that. We dedicated our altar to Carnanos,
Mm-hmm.
because it represented itself as Carnanos. But sorry, my
No,
my experience became a little bit more towards Enki,
oh yeah, okay.
and
I am familiar.
it uh, and which kind of led me to episodes on here that I wasn't consciously aware of being guided to this through that entity. It's just interesting when you say that they're not entirely human. I found that they're as much part of the earth,
Mm.
or nature. Sorry, nature is more precise to it. Do you find that yourself, that some of them have a very organic nature feel to them?
There are certainly spirits that I've interacted with that I would deem elementals in the sort of like common paranormal parlance, where there are intelligences that are of this place that are tied to deep and old and wild natural things that are a little bit more than merely personifications of natural forces, the genius loci and the land whites and things like that. In the case of the Keprian spirits, the folks that we work with and sort of are tied in with, it's a little bit more like travelers that maybe didn't start out here, but effectively have their spiritual green cards.
Okay, they they found the earth and said, "Oh, this is a nice place. Let's stay here a while."
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah. Why not have a human experience for a while? This is fascinating. Let's have fun.
Yeah, it well, different existences are paramount to growth, I think.
Yeah.
Um, like in my practice, I do visualizations where I take the form of an animal, kind of shamanistic type. I transform myself into the animal, and I go a mile in its shoes. And flying is quite interesting in that
Mm.
state. It seems a little bit out there to say that on a podcast.
Honestly, nope, nope, not even a little bit. I just said I work with disembodied spirits that probably didn't come from Earth to begin with. It's okay. Um, like really, really, truly, like once you start like really digging into stuff, a lot. One, you realize that so many of the labels and boxes are pretty arbitrary or have been projected from an incomplete understanding or even a hesitation to fully understand what we're dealing with. That once you name something that is occult or paranormal or supernatural, uh, and you really start to get to know it, I think it's perfectly normal to realize that those names are things that we create for ourselves to relate to something that's a little too big for us to wrap our heads around at the time, and that none of the labels hold perfectly true. That you can talk about aliens in one community, you can talk about spirits in another, and you can talk about interdimensional, trans-dimensional deities and beings in another. And if you really sit and listen to that discourse, to people's experiences, not the labels, not their beliefs about those experiences, but what they're reporting, everybody's talking about the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. What? Okay, I'm gonna change subjects on you. Sorry.
Okay. Oh no, that's fine. That's fine.
Uh, what's the top 3 to 5 etiquettes a paranormal investigator should follow?
Oh, well, I mean, the first thing is don't try to get results by bullying things or screaming at them or just trying to cause trouble for stuff. Like respect the spirits as you would any intelligent being. Assume that they are intelligent and therefore they have the same rights, they have feelings. Like you shouldn't try to bind, to compel, to force them to do anything. It should be an invitation. It should be a conversation. The same goes for the land, for the space itself. Respect it
Mm,
as a thing itself, as an entity or a being in its own right. Treat it kindly. Leave it the same way it was when you found it. Uh, Try to build a relationship with it, and you might be surprised at what kind of response you get, as opposed to just going in and assuming that you can take charge. And the third thing I would say is also build a healthy relationship with yourself, and understand what your boundaries are and recognize when you're not comfortable, and when something feels like it's maybe too much or like triggering you in ways that you're not comfortable with. And, be kind enough to yourself to not push too hard. Uh, I think a lot of spiritual paths and practices are about challenging ourselves and pushing certain boundaries. But there is also a point where we should be aware of when we're pushing too hard and too far and too fast and are actually doing damage to ourselves.
I've found in working with these entities, if you're pushing too hard, they'll push back a bit and kind of, well, one experience set me on my butt.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was They were asking me to do something, and I was ignoring them, and then all of a sudden, they kind of took over and said, "Yeah, you have to do this now."
Mm-hmm.
And my blood pressure went up to 174 over 104. And
Not good.
no,
Definitely not.
no. And I channeled a painting that has real meaning to what I'm doing. Um, and it showed me something that a question, the answer to a question that I've been asking all of my life. Uh, since I at 14, I was poisoned and I died. I was gone for about 7 minutes, and I chose to come back to my body.
Mm-hmm.
So that experience colored a bit more of my life, and I was asking the questions of how can I do what was asked of me when I chose to return, and that gave me an answer. It basically a whole connection with everything in a very profound way. Anyways,
No, I can see with that experience, I can see why shamanic practices and shamanically styled practices appeal, because that death and rebirth is a key initiatory experience that you see in shamanic practices the world over. That sort of almost spiritual calling, or being called back, becoming a walker between the worlds, a walker between life and death, someone who's got a foot in one side and the other, and thus has a unique perspective that is both and yet neither. Like there's a lot of power there if you can fearlessly harness it.
Yeah. It's that it's been difficult because this happened when I was 14. I just had no way of coping with all of that.
Oh yeah, no, we don't get a whole lot of tools in this culture. Like we spend I one of the things that just always aggravates me is like so many of us spend decades of our lives just struggling with the, oh, am I crazy? Is this just like something that I should suppress? Like is this like is any of this real at all? Rather than just, having that leap of faith and go, what if I experience it and analyze it afterwards? Like let's just see what happens.
Just go with it and see where it leads.
Yeah, like answer the call, follow the
Hmm.
path.
Kind of be true to yourself a bit and and to the experience itself.
Yeah, and don't let the expectations or obligations of others, the sort of like performative normalcy, inhibit whatever spark you actually have.
Um, I spent a lot of time doing that. I had problems when I was young with gender and
Mhm.
not knowing where exactly I fit because I don't really identify as male yet. That's what I was born, and I don't identify as female either. So it was always difficult.
I can relate to that. I'm intersex,
Yeah,
so
yeah. I watched, sorry, listened to one of your podcasts about gender, and I found it very informing and very helpful. Um, so, in your experience, how did you come to terms with who you are?
some of it actually came from my undergrad work. So I did my undergrad thesis on shamanism, and like sort of the world traditions that echoed that, not shamanic practice as the concept of uh, an individual in a community who is called usually through a mental or a physical health crisis, often through a literal or figurative death and rebirth, where they are introduced to this whole sort of experience of like visionary travel and connection with spirits, and they come back changed as a healer, as an oracle, as a traveler between worlds. And one of the things that stood out about that in the process of becoming and being called to be this walker between, in a lot of the world traditions, shamanic people are also outside of gender, or they manifest their calling and acceptance of their shamanic role by adopting a different gender than what they were born into. So there's this whole trans quality that is like significant to that, and I think at the core is indicative to the sense that, you know, does your spirit really have like genitals, and is that even important to your spirit? So if you're going to focus more on your experience as a spirit, you're going to focus more on your sense of identity and qualities that we might as a physical culture identify as like either male or female, but those are more, it's more complicated than that, and also simpler. Like you are you are what you are, and you just embrace that and manifest that if you are going to follow your path and be fully empowered. So that was part of it. The other part was actually learning that intersex was even a thing. Because I'm not going to lie that I did not struggle with the idea. Like I had, from a very early age, I was like, I'm not a girl. So I must be a boy. So like I tried to rename myself. I would, take my pigtails and put them underneath a baseball cap when we would go to like the amusement parks and stuff. And it would thrill me if somebody would identify me with a different pronoun. Like that, this was a long-standing thing. But again, I was born in the 70s, so that was a weird thing. I live in the middle of the United States in a fairly rural conservative area. So this was not part of the discourse. Like as much as my family was open-minded about psychic stuff, uh, there was not the same level of acceptance for like gender orientation, like any differences with that. And in fact, quite the opposite. My grandmother very studiously, actively would like push me away from any uh, physical presentations or habits that seemed to be masculine, and to a degree that was very noticeable and a little scarring, not going to lie.
Yeah.
And that didn't become clear why until one, I discovered that intersex was absolutely a thing, that some people are born intersex, and there's a whole umbrella for what that is. And then learning in my around 2002 is when I found out for sure, for absolute sure, that I was intersex. And my grandmother had been the person who made the decision to assign me female,
Okay.
because at birth it wasn't clear. And so there was this sort of like long-standing, very tangled relationship of making sure nothing about me seemed inappropriately masculine, because I'm not either, really. And like down to like a genetic level, I'm not. And that's a significant part of my psychic and my spiritual journey, a significant part of like really reclaiming and feeling empowered by myself. Like up until that point, I was like, well, should I transition? Am I trans? Like maybe I need to be a boy, but that didn't feel completely right either. So finally, like it was like going to doctors and endocrinologists and things, and they were like, so, there's this thing. Uh, and that was in many ways as significant a revelation on like a profoundly liberating level than any psychic experience I had had, any like past life revelation I had had. Like it made the pieces of my life that still felt jagged and awkward fit. It all made sense. Like I didn't need to try to force myself to be more masculine. I didn't need to force myself to be more feminine. And I wasn't any of those. None of those boxes fit. I could just be me. And that
Yeah.
was, yeah, it was glorious, gloriously liberating moment.
That's awesome. Um, I it this whole talk I've been thinking of two spirit people,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, early on we did a two-part with Mene Chikabe, who is a Canadian two spirit elder, and Uthun Crawford, who is uh, a member of the Lakota tribe in Boise, Idaho, and their two perspectives on who they are, and that uh, a Uthan transitioned from female to male, and Mane Chikabe uh, at a young age was told she is Nishnabé by her grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
and her grandmother accepted her as what she was. But her grandmother also lived a rural life and was accepting because she didn't have the influence of what they call colonizers in
Yeah.
the area, and so she Manet's experience was completely different than Uthan, and I just found the stories and your story are very important for young people struggling with these issues. And
Oh, especially right
yeah,
now. Yeah.
um, a number of friends committed suicide of mine that they couldn't deal with their problems with gender and acceptance in their own families because of them not being quote unquote normal. Um, it I just we need to discuss these things openly and kind of bring the rest of the world into understanding that gender is not really a thing. It's sex is, you can be one, the other, or in between. But even that is blend. There's a blend,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I know somebody who's a chimera. Like a lot of people will think, well, your sex is easy to tell, like it's black and white. You're either XX or you're XY. And I'm like, well, actually, not to be that well actually internet person, but like you've got XXY, you've got people who are chimeras who literally, depending on what part of their body somebody sources from, they might be XX, they might be XY. And it's so much more complicated than that. And I think another important thing, because I see intersex people kind of weaponized in the trans and especially anti-trans
Mm.
discourse, that like you can't like sure there's some intersex people, but you can't just choose that. Well, the thing is intersex, first of all, it by itself presents very differently, and there's multiple things that cause it, and it is entirely possible for it to not be physically visible and to be very much an internal hormonal thing. And on top of that, who is anybody, anybody, uh, to tell another person what their experience of their own body and their own identity is? Who really truly has that right? How dare they?
Yeah.
How dare they?
Um, to get back to spiritual things,
Yeah. Sorry, because I feel very very strongly about it, and it's yeah.
that's I would let you go on for the rest of the podcast about that because it is that important. It's very important that people be able to accept who they are and the people, the society around them accept them as who they are, rather than try to fit them in a box that doesn't fit and causes them harm. We'll be right back. Back to spiritual things.
Yeah.
Fairies. What's your thoughts on fairies?
I grew up in a family that was Irish, or at least Irish American. So I fairies were just a part of everything. I heard stories about fairies. Well, first of all, fairies from an Irish, even an Irish American perspective, are not cute little glitter shitters. They are not Tinkerbell. They are wild forces out in the world, especially in the more natural places. And they are things that you should approach with great respect, if not a little bit of almost holy dread, because they are things that they operate on very different rules, often not human rules, certainly not human ideas of good and evil. And they're a lot more like the natural world, which can be as destructive as it is beautiful.
This is true. Um, we have a house fairy. At least that's what we call it. It's a moth that's been alive more. It's been alive longer than any moth I've ever seen, and it has any moth that I've ever encountered tries to stay away from you. This
Mm-hmm.
moth will land on you, and its weight is far more. It landed on my hand when I was painting because it asked me to put it in a painting,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt like the weight of trying to hold up my cat with that hand. So it had physical weight, and it does mimic the cat every once in a while, but it's its own thing. It will. I'm in no at no point during my experience with this entity do I ever think that it's human.
Yeah.
It's more, and I think it just enjoys our our space because we turned it into a. We have more plants in our house than anything else, and well, plants and old books Um, we have it's a Bible, but it's a learning Bible for priests
Hmm.
from the early to mid 1800s. I'm not sure on the actual date. I think it was 1840. And the only reason we picked it up is because it felt right. We're not Catholic at all. We don't subscribe to Catholicism, but that felt right. Um,
It probably meant something to somebody and has a lot of energy to it.
yeah.
Like objects can become, kind of relics, like, more than haunted objects. They become like psychic touchstones, like anchor
Hmm.
points of faith and the belief. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Does place have power to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's certain places that speak to me more deeply than others. Many places that have just a different sort of feel to them, some of which are not always wild places. The city of New Orleans, especially in the French Quarter, like there is almost an intelligence of the space itself, like manifests that can take on an almost human appearance, but you can tell that that's a form she wears to better communicate with the people who are there. And deep wild places as well, that they're a little bit less inclined to take on something that seems like a human face because they don't really see the use of it. Uh, they're a little bit less familiar with it, but I mean, New Orleans has people running around in her all the time, and I think she actually enjoys. She's learned to enjoy
Yeah.
uh, the pageantry of humanity in her space that is her. Uh, I think if you want to be not just a good paranormal investigator, but like if you want to be engaged spiritually with the world around you, developing a relationship with space and places and approaching them with an animistic mindset that there's an intelligence there and it might not be human and it might not communicate with you, but you should at least be polite and say hello.
Yes. A tradition of mine is I always have a water bottle with me, so I use the water as an offering to the place that I'm at. And that I find opens a lot of doors. And if I find something, I give something back.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a I it's almost a native practice, but I think it's universal. Everyone that understands nature to any degree will leave an offering. Like as a young child, I went hunting, and my father insisted that I thank the animal,
Mm-hmm.
and that we always had sage with us, and I blew the sage smoke into the animal's nose to free its spirit. And I found that to be a very powerful wake up call. Um, that being said, I've never hunted since
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to me, and um, I'm empathetic to the animal to the point that when I killed it, I could feel its death, and it just didn't feel right to me to do that again. Now, eating meat, I do eat meat, but the there isn't the full on spiritual connection there. I find that it's a little bit less when I have distance away from it,
Mm-hmm.
but I still respect the food for what it is, and it's a living entity. And I find a lot of my vegan friends who say that plants plants don't feel like animals do, and yes, they do. If you
Yeah, I weirdly like I'll grow some of my own like little sprouts and things like that, and I will sometimes get so attached to them that I'm like, but I don't want to eat you now. Like have a good life, be in my yard.
yeah
So I can relate to that. And it's sort of a hard perspective for people to like, well, because they can see it with animals. And I'm like, but it's all alive. Like life feeds on life.
Yes,
It's just it's how you have to develop that relationship and be aware of it and not be, I don't know, not be, well, first of all, not take it for granted, and also never, I don't know, it's complicated, really,
it
right?
is. It is. It's very complicated, but it's also simple in that you have to eat to live.
Yeah.
But in the process of that, respect the life around you, and it will respect you by giving you the food to eat.
And I relate because I was taken hunting and fishing as a kid as well, and we didn't do the sage thing, but like the like recognizing the animal and like having this sort of like almost communion with it was a pretty important part of what was presented to me.
Yeah,
Uh, Hunting's not my thing. Really didn't enjoy it very much. I did like fishing more, but that actually felt more brutal to the animals because there was so much just tossing these poor things back after we had just when I started to get old enough to like really think about it, I was like, this is definitely not for me.
yeah, yeah. It can almost fishing can almost be vicious.
Yeah, yeah, especially fishing for sport, and that did not speak. It was a different relative who would take me there, and that did not speak to me in the same way once I was old enough to like really think about it.
Yeah. Um, Pazuzu
Ah,
has
yes.
it's been treated badly in recent literature and TV. What what would you describe Pazuzu as?
So a lot of people ask me why Pazuzu is not in my dictionary of demons, and the simplest answer is although technically the language used in the root culture for Pazuzu will best translate as demon, Pazuzu is a much more complicated figure than what we think of as demons, because Pazuzu was this sort of king of demons, not in the sense exactly that he was Satan who's lording over hell and like sending all these demons out at people in a Christian paradigm, but in a fairly unique to certain ancient Near East and Middle Eastern cultures idea that there was a class of beings that could be uh, very detrimental to humans, that we translate as demons. But he was the person that you would go to because he had power over them to protect you from them or to convince them to stop attacking you. So he's this incredibly complicated figure who you will find just as many like prayers and spells invoking his wrath and anger and like more traditionally demonic qualities as you will find things that are basically prayers asking for Pazuzu's protection. There's a very similar ancient Egyptian figure with the unlikely to us now name of Tutu,
Yeah,
just like the little pink thing that
yeah,
kids wear at titles. Who was basically the same thing over the decans of the zodiac, the demons. And again, I use air quotes for demons because at that point in time, what were known as demons were quite different from what we know now, thanks to the very dualistic mythological culture that Judaism and Christianity particularly kind of borrowed from
mhm,
Zoroastrianism, and like now it's very black and white, and back then it was so many shades of gray. Uh, so Pazuzu is
yeah.
complex, and as much as he's a king of demons, that doesn't mean that he's the equivalent of Satan. From the cultural perspective, he's the guy you would go to call off the dogs, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Okay, so protection.
Yeah, yeah, actually a very protective and not a class that would be, completely equated with the deity, but certainly up there in his level of power and influence.
Like a high priest, pretty much, or not,
I
or more than that.
drawing on my comparative religious background, what it actually reminds me of is in Tibetan Buddhism, you have peaceful and wrathful
Mm,
deities. If you look at the descriptions of the peaceful deities, they really like will resonate with, folks with a Christian background as angels or gods. We'll see them as gods and goddesses pretty readily. They're compassionate, they're kind, they're out there to like, help and heal, they're protective. The wrathful deities, if you look at their descriptions and how they will present themselves to people from our perspective, that's going to look like demons. And the fact of the matter is, from that worldview, they're not either of them necessarily angels or demons. All of them, peaceful or wrathful, have the goal of helping human beings, helping their souls become their best possible selves, to achieve non-attachment, to move beyond the cycle of rebirth. And the peaceful deities use compassion and kindness and sort of like mother and nurture
mm,
you to find that. But not everybody responds to that. So you've got the wrathful deities who are a little bit more punitive, who are a little bit more intimidating, who kind of like scare you into being your better self. And it's more that there's different approaches that have a different, that can have the same result. That being aggressive or being scary and being intimidating is not the same as being evil. And that is closer to where Pazuzu comes from, like where you have to put yourself in the cultural context of the origin of that being.
um, it, to me, I've studied Sumerian deities quite a lot
Mm-hmm.
because of my experiences. Pazuzu kind of it, it rings a bell to me that Pazuzu would be a Sumerian type,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, because there's always the Sumerian gods are very complex, particularly Namu.
Yeah.
She is both destroyer and creator, and that aspect is part of the painting that I did. Um, in follow, it's called the astral world tree,
Mm-hmm.
and the path that it follows, it's basically the spiral of a universe, and that so it's very destructive. The center of a solar system, or not a solar system, a universe, where you have
Mm-hmm.
the massive black hole that sucks everything in, destroys it, but it also creates in the process. Um, so these deities or these entities very much seem to be, well, I call them daemons as opposed to demon,
Yeah.
because the
No, yeah, I like that distinction.
and then the ones that are just out to destroy everything and not create anything, I call those demons.
Mm-hmm.
And I've only encountered one creature in that mode in my life, and it plagued me when I was a child because it kept attacking me, and until I got brave enough to say, "Why don't you just go off?" And it never bothered me.
Sometimes it's all it takes, though.
Yeah,
Like really, like just the ability to like set that boundary and be like, no, really, f you, go
yeah.
away.
Well, it culminated in it choking me. It was literally trying to take my life, and
Mm-hmm.
I basically looked at it, and I almost physically saw it. It never showed itself, but then that day it kind of showed itself. It was just an evil son of a gun that wanted to destroy everything around it, and I just told him, get out, and it never bothered me since. Um, but I also feel the energy of things around me quite a lot. and I'll walk by a house and say something bad's happened there, or
Mm.
something bad is there, and uh, but I also have the opposite, the exact opposite. I've walked into a place and felt completely at peace in that area, even if it's chaotic and everything's going everywhere. Uh, I can tell the difference. Um,
Yeah.
being, I don't call myself psychic. I don't think of myself in that way. I've never been tested for it, and I don't think that that really fits for me. But how would you test yourself to find out if you are?
I mean, that's a good question because like I was never tested either. Um, the Rhine Institute in the United States used to do stuff like that, and you know, I was it was not too long ago that I actually had an opportunity to go there, and they were like, well, you know, why did you never come? And it was a whole lot of reasons, but mostly that my grandmother was very suspicious of um, having these abilities be sort of public knowledge. She was worried that they could be exploited. Uh, so I think the first way of like, how do you test these abilities is first of all, it's a very personal journey, and it the first step is actually really getting a good sense of like how what is your relationship with yourself, like what is the landscape inside your head, how do you experience the world, what perceptions do you resonate with most, and can you tell the difference, when do you tell the difference between those being very physical things, like things that are coming from the physical world, and a knowing, a knowledge, an experience that is arguably not coming from what we think of as the physical material world. Uh, so, really, the second step to testing it after knowing yourself is starting to ask the question of why am I feeling this? Why do I know this? Where is this coming from? And just really spending some time. I find journaling is really
Mm-hmm.
helpful. Not everybody likes to write or is comfortable with it. So sometimes just talking or recording yourself and like getting your thoughts out, something that puts your experience in a recorded medium is very helpful because one, it gets the thoughts out there. Then it also puts it in a recorded format that you can revisit without it changing, and you can analyze from a perspective once you are out of the experience. And at the end, I think each person has to judge for themselves what they believe about what that really is. And that's sort of the leap of faith, really, because I know plenty of people who psychic ability, paranormal experience is just simply not part of their worldview. It doesn't fit in like the world as they understand it or what they're comfortable with philosophically or theologically at this point in their journey. So, regardless of what experiences they have, when they get to that point of analyzing it, like, what does this mean? They make a different choice than I might make. And just because I disagree with them, I don't think it's my place to say, like, no, really, that's psychic. Because for me, it would
Yeah.
be. But if they're not comfortable, like, so how do you test it? You experience and you ask questions. And uh, if you're serious about developing it and understanding it, you keep records. And some of the best options is if you have the opportunity to have even one or two close associates, friends who are on their version of this journey with you, where you can compare experiences and sound off and vent and ask questions freely and trust them to tell you uh, as clearly as possible their honest interpretation, even if that means like checking you and saying, no, I don't think you're being objective about that this time, and here's why. So having kind of like a tight crew who are willing to learn together with you, each in their own way.
Okay. That sounds like my wife.
Mm.
She checks me and makes sure that I'm being true to myself. Um, she well, I had a dream 6 months before we met, in which I met her, and it took 13 years to see the fruition of that dream,
Mhm.
and it floored me how accurate it was to our life. Um, I won't go into it because we're getting up to an hour.
Yeah.
Um, and with that, I'll move on to the next question. Sorry.
Okay. No, no, it's okay. It sounds like a really deep and fulfilling experience, though. So thank you for sharing even a taste.
It it is part of the course with my life, and it gave me an appreciation of her and situations in my life that it took me 13 years to have that aha moment.
Hmm.
And those moments in life are beautiful. Uh, what is your practices for Samhain? Do you do like a Day of the Dead type thing?
It's kind of a multi-day affair for me because I have a more pagan practice, which is absolutely um, reaching out and making space for communication and connection with spirits and ancestors and whatnot. My physical home, we've got an area that has been set aside since we bought the house for the ritual work of House Kepru. It's where I keep my occult library of uh, several thousand books. It's not small, and there's an altar. There are spirit doors. So for Samhain, is those spirit doors get opened, and they stay open for the whole dark side of the year. Um, but with House Kepru, and let me declare, I wrote all the ritual system for House Kepru. It is informed by my comparative religious studies background. It is a lot about sort of expressing core ideals and letting each ritual be sort of a psychosocial exercise of like what this time of year means to us as a group. So we also do Imkepru, which is sort of the tent pole ritual of House Kepru. So Samhain for us also is a night of transformation where we reflect on that aha moment, like when we became who we are, when we like formally were called to and committed to our transformative journey, whether it was only in this lifetime or something that stretched back over multiple incarnations, where we touched the core of who we were and on some level said, I want more of that. I want to embody as much of this as possible. If that was an experience of the divine or an experience of your most true highest self, whatever that manifested for each person. We stand in a circle, or during the pandemic, we stand in a Zoom call uh, and go back to that moment figuratively, energetically, and try to reignite the spark so that we can recapture that sense of discovery and unfolding and transformation and becoming throughout the rest of the year.
That's excellent. And in inviting the spirits to be with you, you're giving them that moment to have that aha moment with you.
Yeah, and to stand witness, to share with us. So a lot of these spirits that we work with, I actually all of this embodied. A core thing with House Kepru is we believe that we are a soul group.
Mm.
The vast majority of us have incarnated and known one another before. In reincarnation in past lives is a pretty significant part of our inner, like the mystery part of the mystery school. And it's only mostly private because it's personal. Like it's not like we're trying to hide anything. It's more these are our stories. But the disembodied are people that we've known before, even the ones that aren't necessarily as human as you'd expect. They've been human before, and they're brothers and lovers and enemies and friends and siblings, and we've all played many roles to one another. And the opening of those spirit doors at that point in the year is also like actively making space for them in our lives to engage with us over the next several months, up to our main Day of the Dead, for lack of a better term for it, is actually where everybody else celebrates Imbolc. So the end of January, beginning of February, as the winter tide of the year starts to wane, that's when we do a final communication, a final, not exactly a goodbye, because it's often a time when some of our disembodied will declare whether or not they're coming back into flesh. And folks who are looking to have children can make an invitation to invite them back to their lives if that is something that they want to do. And we set some time aside to have like direct communication for those who both have the ability and the desire to do
Mm.
so. And we make offerings of energy, of intent, of emotion, to make sure that we keep that relationship from one side to the next open and alive.
That's beautiful. If someone doesn't know their ancestors and where they came from, how do how can they practice a ritual with their ancestors?
I am a big proponent of found family. So when we say ancestors, it doesn't have to be blood relatives. I don't think folks who are adopted or who don't have a good relationship with their actual blood relatives should ever feel excluded by the word ancestor. Think of ancestors as spirits, beings that have a resonance with you, some sort of a family bond that is not necessarily blood family, not necessarily somebody who sat with you at Thanksgiving dinner or whatever your like big family thing is, someone who has something to teach you, someone who's gone through an experience similar to you, and that resonance draws you together, forges a connection across lives and across time and across whatever distances spirits travel, where they're willing to be your auntie or your big brother, and stand with you and care, and guide you, and sometimes scold you if you need a little bit of reprimanding. So making space, one, to be open to ancestors being more than just your dead grandmother or that problematic racist uncle, because you don't have to have them at the table. You don't. If you want to leave a space for them, you're welcome to do so. If you want to try to repair the relationship with them or give them a chance to grow, that's great. But don't limit yourself, because we're connected more deeply than a nuclear family is ever connected. We're connected more deeply. And ancestors don't always have to be things that you would recognize as human. That resonance, that lesson, that thing that could be offered to help you evolve and grow, that could come from so many different directions. Be open to it. Don't be limited by the word.
Yeah, it's an energetic connection. What's your favorite Halloween or Samhain tradition?
I mean, I celebrate Halloween too because I am a big old geeky goth and I love horror, spooky stuff. Uh, I mean, I love everything about it. As Halloween, I loved and still love the ability to dress up as whatever you want to be, and have nobody question that. There was a television series that was really formative to me when I was a kid. It was called Beauty and the Beast. It had Linda Hamilton and Ron Perlman. And the second place I had encountered the word Samhain was in an episode called that revolved around this,
Yeah.
where obviously Beauty and the Beast, Vincent the Beast doesn't look human. He sort of looks like a lion man, and this is the one night where he gets to go out and nobody questions his humanity, what he is. Nobody looks at him askance, and that deep liberating ability to just wear your inside on the outside if you want to and have nobody question it. I think there's a reason why so many like queer, weird, and quirky kids just completely gravitate to Halloween and want Halloween to be like every day of the year. Because for some of us, especially when if we lived in places or if we were raised in belief systems where we couldn't always be ourselves, or at least not all of ourselves, Halloween was the time where we could.
What do you think of Krampuslauf?
I think it's fun. I really I like that we're at a point culturally where we just sort of play and are willing to sort of indulge new things, and even like, um, have you heard of, is it Wolfenute? Ah,
Oh,
little kid on the internet just made up a holiday that was like his alternative to, I think, Thanksgiving in the U.S. and Wolfenschnut or something, and it's basically like another gift giving thing that it revolved around wolves and wild things, and just it's adorable and lovely and charming, and the internet picked it up, and I know multiple friends who celebrate it.
that's awesome.
So yeah, and like, why not? Like, why not? Like, if there are things that don't work for you, why not make your own damn holidays? Because really, who's to stop you? And that's where traditions start anyway.
Hmm.
Like, we make it up. And I know I'm coming from the perspective of someone who like invented their entire system. Like House Kepper, that is all my stuff. I wrote the ritual system. It is definitely inspired from multiple places, but I was like, well, why can't I? And so I did. And it's had an influence on a number of different communities. And to the point where there's things that like you'll run across, you won't even realize that it came from me and my stuff, because it's out
Yeah.
there. Um, and really, like, I think two of the best questions to ever ask yourself is why not, and what's stopping you, especially when it brings joy.
Yeah. Yeah. We need that now more
Yeah,
than ever.
yeah. Oh, more than ever. Oi, oi.
Yeah. Well, that concludes all the questions I have for you today. Is there anything that you would like to add or uh, promote?
I mean, I've got lots of books. I have a website. I do curious things like make incense that is several millennia old in its recipe, that was used in Egyptian temples as a way of like opening the gateway between dreams and spirits and the gods. And that's sort of a fun thing. It's called kapet or kifi. I've got so many books out. It's kind of ridiculous. So really just going to the website is probably your best bet. Uh, I have a haunted Airbnb, which is where I'm actually sitting doing the interview right now, because we're cleaning it up after people stayed and did like a little weekend investigation. And you can find that just on Airbnb and stay. Like, it was where I was teaching classes before the pandemic, but I don't feel that it's really safe or wise to encourage, like weekend seminars with people traveling. So I instead encourage people to, travel as their own pod. And if they want to come out and spend a weekend or a couple of days getting to know the spirits of a really cozy haunting, Inspiration House on Airbnb in Oberlin, Ohio is something they can look up.
Next.
And I have also, if you want to learn, like I do classes kind of constantly remotely now. And the best place to do that would be my Patreon, which is the easiest thing of everything I do to remember, because it's patreon.com/haunted.